And then I'm asking, why? Why does God do those? I'm going to share with you some of what I think. It all begins with the fact that it was God who made him who knew no sin to be sin on our behalf. Have these young people say, how do you know that your parents love you? Can you imagine God not just allowing his son to be sacrificed, but being willing to turn his perfect son into sin? That's what he did. It was God who had to separate himself from the Son. Why? Because he made Jesus sin. And our God is perfectly consistent in his holiness, is he not? If our iniquities separate us from God, if the wages of our sin is death, which that word means separation, if the cost of sin is separation, do we think that Jesus escaped that? God made his son sin knowing that he would be separated from his son. Think about all of that for a moment. Think of all that God did not spare himself from. He watched his son fly off into another realm of existence. He landed in the poorest of accommodations in a little Middle East village. He was welcomed by the songs of heavenly sounding chorus, and some excited shepherds searched out the new arrival, and they honored him for his deployment. Yet, for God there remains an overarching and a nagging reality. Not only will the war cost his son's life, but it will put father and son at odds with each other. The father who had signed the enlistment papers would hear these words from the lips of his dying son. My God, why have you forsaken me? God did not spare his son, nor did he spare himself. No wonder the world was dark. The Father of lights was darkened. The one who spoke light into existence now was so heavily in tears that he blocked out the sun. And that's exactly how it's put in Luke's gospel. The sun stopped shining. Our God did not spare his own son. He did not spare himself from that moment of darkness. You know, we make such an issue of that veil being torn from top to bottom. Why? I can just feel a tormented, angered God who has turned his son into sin for us. And his hands long to reach down and comfort his son, but he can't. So what would you do? I'd grab something and tear it too. And what he tore was the veil that kept humanity from accessing him. Could it have been uncontrollable grief spasms? Have you been there? So sorrowful your body shakes. Could our God been have experiencing that, and that been the moment, that been the cause of the earth shaking? The Father heard the Son when Jesus fell to his face and he prayed, Father, if it is possible, may this cup pass from me. Yet not as I will, but as you. And he heard him pray that 2 more times. Father heard that. He listened to that prayerful pleading. Was it that request from his Son that entered into his heart as he watched his Son die because of sin? Did our God want to just give him life back? Just go, bam! Rip him off the cross. Give him life. Let him be the ruler of all humanity. But he couldn't, because he's not sparing his Son. I can't give him life. I'm taking his. So what he did was he took some time and he searched for what the Scripture calls, there were holy corpses that were resurrected in the city of Jerusalem. And they came in and they walked into town. Was that because God so longed to give life back to his own Son, but he could not? That he could find other holy saints and give them life. And so he did. Our God was not sparing himself. Was it the ears of the Father who had just witnessed his Son gone bad? Folks, this was the ultimate Son gone bad, wasn't it? Because in God's eyes, he had just seen his Son become the sin of all humanity. Was it those ears that really needed to hear what the centurion had to say? Truly, he was the Son of God. Was it God who needed that comfort at that moment? No wonder Jesus told Mary that Sunday morning as he reveals himself to her, and the Scripture says she clings to him. Remember what he says? Stop clinging to me. I have not yet seen my Father. Jesus was on his way to a reunion. And even a loving admirer wasn't going to keep him from that. He wanted reconciliation with his Father. He longed to be connected again with the God of all comfort, whom he had been separated from for too long. God did not spare his Son. Well, back in our text. Paul's point is simply this. If God did not spare himself and his Son from all that was necessary to bring about redemption for humanity, then will he not also, along with him, tied in with Jesus, graciously give us what? All things. I was not talking about all the wealth you ever want. Not talking about every little trinket you ask God for. It's talking about that comfort that won't separate you from God. Nothing can tear it away. That overwhelmingly conquerors. That's the all things that God gives. Single point for today's lesson. God's ability to completely comfort us in any situation. Doesn't matter if you're a teenager dealing with struggles. Doesn't matter if you're a 90-year-old person dealing with the struggles that those present to you. God guarantees, by the demonstration of his own willingness to not spare his Son, he guarantees my comfort because he went through his discomfort. And folks, you can take that to the bank.